Yes, it's got to kick
So
in.
I can still say profane things
Well,
until it kicks in.
I wouldn't say them now, but in theory, you could.
I'm just kidding.
All right. We are live.
Live and in person, coming into your computer and invading your smartphone.
That's right. You get to ride in the cab with Bigfoot.
It's funny because when you first said that, I was not thinking the monster truck. I was thinking like Bigfoot.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of a funny thought in itself.
Yes, I could see where that would be funny. Very much so. Your video actually looks pretty good today, Paul.
Ooh. Well, maybe it's because I have full bars on my internet today,
That's
and I
possible.
restarted it ahead of time.
You restarted it. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit fuzzy, but it's not nearly as bad as it has been in weeks past. So
You look fat. You just don't look as fat as you usually do. So this is a good thing.
That's not what I said, Paul. Not what I said.
We can see your ugly mug in HD now.
That's right. Okay.
By the way, did you ever know people who were twins, but it took you forever to realize they were twins?
No. Everyone that I've known that's been a twin, I've known they were a twin.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
See, there were several people I went to college with who I'd randomly see one and then the other in different places, and it really tripped me out. And then finally, like a long time later, I figured out that they were twins. It's like, man, this dude's everywhere.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, no one's here yet, so we may be on our own today.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't put out any feelers. Should I?
You can if you want. I mean, everybody should know that we record at this time. So
Right.
I'll do the Facebook. You want to do the Google Plus or something like that?
Sure. I'm trying to remember.
And tweet it.
Yeah, where's the link? I always forget where the link is.
Where is the link? Well, I'm going to post it on the Facebook page.
So it's the Ustream.
Yeah, ustream.tv.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh. I tell you, sometimes I hate Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, just get some food if you want. The cold never bothered me anyway. We just bought Frozen on iTunes.
Oh, nice.
Good movie.
I still haven't seen it yet.
Oh, good movie, dude.
So that's what I hear. I want to see it, and I want to see the Lego movie, and haven't gotten a chance to see either.
I haven't seen the Lego movie either, but we took the girls to see Frozen when it was in the theaters, and that's unusual for us because, first of all, we don't typically pay for kids to go to movies like that, just because it rarely works out well. But they'd gotten some Christmas money from my uncle.
Cool.
And so we decided to take them to see Frozen, and we also usually watch the movie before we take the kids to see it to make sure there's not anything that's inappropriate for them.
Right.
5 and 7, you want to protect them still. And but we decided to risk it and go ahead and take them. And we really, really enjoyed it. I mean, I thought the music was great, and the storyline was really good. And it's one of the first Disney movies to show you that you shouldn't decide to marry someone within 5 minutes of meeting them.
Right. I never see. It's funny because as an adult, I get stuff like that, but as a kid, stuff like that never affected me. Like just like watching all the Pink Panther movies as a very young child, it never occurred to me that he was having sex with everything that moved. Nor did it did it strike me that was necessarily a bad. I didn't put any thought to it. Of course, and again, also they weren't graphic scenes anyway,
Right.
so I was just like, they're just having fun. I don't know, whatever, it's just, it wasn't like I want to go find somebody and do that,
Right, exactly. No, but I
But
mean,
yeah, I totally
they
wanna know
always
what you
paint the
mean.
picture of, oh, your Prince Charming is going to show up, and you'll know within 5 minutes that that's the person
Right.
you're going to marry, and it's like,
Right.
it
Not really.
doesn't quite work that way, folks.
Right. Yeah. Well,
So,
that and of course being married to a feminist, my wife's problem with most of them is they always got to have the damsel in distress who always has to be saved by a dude, and
Yeah.
it has to be that way all the time.
So this movie, it's I don't want to give too much away, but it sets it up like that's going to happen, but that's not
Yeah.
what happens.
Oh, nice, cool.
So
Yeah.
your wife may actually enjoy it for that as well.
Oh, she enjoys all pretty much Disney movies anyway. So
No,
I mean,
but
we're
I
big
think
Disney
she'll
fanatics.
appreciate it as a quote unquote feminist. I think she'll
Oh, okay.
appreciate the
Nice.
little twist at the end of how it actually comes about.
Cool.
So
Yeah, and we also still haven't seen Twisted yet either. Is it Twisted? The one that's Rapunzel?
Oh no, Tangled.
Tangled. There we go. Twisted, Tangled. Yeah.
No, it all means the same thing.
Yeah. Although I remember what Twisted is now, entirely different movie.
Hey, we have people.
We have people. Hello, people.
Yeah, we've got Tom and Kirk. Well, Kirk just left. He says Lego Movie is the bomb.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad for that, but I'm a little annoyed that he left. Freaking Kirk. Anyway.
Well, he says he's going to be listening over 4G, so he'll be dropping in and out.
Oh.
Don't let us completely kill off your data plan, Kirk. Just so you know.
Unless you have one of the Sprint plans where it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So that's definitely a possibility. Let's see here. Tim's not here, but he was off in Nashville earlier this week.
Oh, he's back.
Yes, I know. He flew home on Tuesday, I think. I saw
Right.
him in the studio yesterday when I went to drop stuff off. I was at Toby Mac on Monday night in Davis, and that was a fun show. I did not stay for the whole thing because it was an hour and a half drive. So,
Yeah.
By the time Toby got halfway done, I'm like, okay, I'm having a blast, but I'm really tired, and it's already going to be late by the time I get home. So I was like, I'm going to leave before the mad rush. So I packed up all my stuff, and while he was performing, I went, loaded up the car, and left. Then I get back to the car, and I got a parking ticket for parking in the lot where the concert was being held.
Oh, well, that
A
sucks.
$45 freaking dollar
Ooh.
parking ticket.
Ooh.
Apparently, this lot that I parked in, you were supposed to buy a parking pass, but there were no signs anywhere that said parking pass required. So I have an appeal in to them to say, look, this was a one-time thing. I was there for this event. I was working this event. I didn't see any signage anywhere, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
We'll see if they decide to let me off. But $45. I mean, I already had to pay for my own gas to get down there and back.
Right.
I had to buy my own food while I was there. Luckily, I got into the show for free, and I pretty much could go wherever I wanted to, which is I love working with local promoters because
Right.
once they meet you, you pretty much have carte blanche as far as where you want to go behind, backstage. And they gave us an opportunity to get on stage and actually talk about the radio station.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was neat. I had an opportunity to stand up in front of probably about 2,000 people and tell them to go check us out online, since we don't broadcast in that
Nice.
particular area. But
Yeah.
it
That's
was
cool.
good. It was good. I
Very
met,
nice.
what's his name? JD Drew. He's one of the DJs for K-Love.
Oh, okay.
So I got to meet him. Super nice guy. All the
Yeah.
K-Love folks are really kind.
Well, isn't that kind of like in the
They just talk like they're
requirement?
on NPR. Yeah.
right?
It's
They're
like
like,
the love of
"He-
Jesus
hello,
just
Chris."
oozes out of them.
Hello, Chris. I have a Bible verse for you today.
That's right.
I was thinking about it, and I was dreaming that I would meet you, and God would tell me exactly what to say, and the scripture just came to me. Let me share it with you.
I love
Sorry, K-Love listeners.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well,
Although my
So-
favorite ones, and I know that Broken plays a couple of these too, but my favorite ones are like the little vignette pieces that are all basically start like this. Well, guys, I was walking down the street yesterday and I saw something. It reminded me of God. You know why?
That would be ground wire.
Yeah, ground wire. Yes. And
For
don't get me
more
wrong.
information or to talk to a live spiritual coach, go to groundwire.net.
.net. Yeah.
Uh,
Which I think they're great, but it just cracks me up once you notice the formula. It's kind of downhill from there. You're just like, oh yeah. Let me guess. You went to a restaurant and you saw a baby, and it reminded you of how helpless we all are in the eyes of God.
That's it. What? Let me ask you this: if this is if this would be considered a backhanded compliment? Okay, so
all right.
I get done on the stage and I'm headed off, and JD is standing at the back, waiting for his turn to go back up and finish up his little part. And as I'm walking by, he sticks his hand out to shake my hand. I introduce myself and I say, "Hey, how's it going, JD? My wife is a big fan."
Right.
So I said that to somebody the other day, and they said, well, isn't that kind of a backhanded compliment? Like, you're not a fan, but your wife is a fan.
It borders. I would say it kind of blurs the edges of that, because on one hand, yeah, he probably gets it. You're not the biggest fan, but he knows what kind of station you work for. That seems like that would be implied. And also, let's face it, you're a dude.
Yeah.
That also kind of implies. Unless you're over 50 and you're a dude, you're probably not going to be a huge K-Love fan. And K-Love knows this. Their demographic and Air One's demographic are not dudes.
Well,
they are women who drive SUVs and minivans packed with kids. That is their demo.
Definitely.
Just like when I worked in Top 40, my demo was women between the ages of like 18 and 35. That's what I was judged on. None of the rest of it mattered.
When I worked for a local Top 40 station, I wanted to, I was trying to get on the air. That was my goal, was to DJ with them. And the head programmer, the VP in charge of programming, basically told me, you will probably never, ever get on the air here because your voice is too young for our demographic.
Right.
So, and here I was in my late 20s. Yeah. And, it ain't going to drop any lower, folks.
Right.
Unless I take up smoking.
Yeah.
Then I might be able to alter things a little bit, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Right. Or join a metal band, where you're constantly just going, ah! That'll do it too.
Yeah, that's another option. But I thought it was funny that that was the criteria, that they said that my voice was too young. The audience would not find me believable.
Believable. Now, see, that's what I find kind of funny. Of course, and again, I also find it kind of funny because the whole like voice and perception and all that, because the guy who was my boss and did the morning show on the Top 40 station I worked for was this big old white dude. I mean, you and I are big white dudes. This guy was a big white dude, and everyone thought he was black until they would beat him. And it's funny because he never
was Michael McDonald.
I guess so. But you to look at him, I don't know. I mean, maybe it was because I met him before I really heard him that much. But he never struck me as sounding all that black. But he liked to use phrases like "what it do" and "that's what it is," and he liked the Ebonic phrases just because it sounded hip to him. But the consequences of that is a ton of people always thought he was black.
Gotcha.
And with he had kind of a race generic name. His on-air name was Brad Elliott.
Okay.
So I mean, you could kind of see that being a black DJ name. I mean, it's it's not like his name was Gangsta Style or something. I mean, I'm trying to think of what would be a horrendous like hip hop, DJ names like DJ Crush or something. I mean, it's not like, it just screamed, "Hello, I'm an African American male DJ," but still at the same time, you're just going, "Really? Wow. Black? Whatever."
That's funny. Let me see here. Does mine and Paul's audio seem to match volume-wise?
Check. Yeah. How does it sound now, folks? Do I sound about even with Chrissy Poo over there?
That's right. How are you doing?
What's going on, my people? Are you ready to rock?
My name is Ratchet. Paul is louder. Well, let me try this and see. I've increased my volume. Let me see if that does anything. I don't know if
Am I still louder?
Yeah, well, that's what Tom says on the chat. Are you in the chat? You're probably not in the chat.
I'm not in the chat. I don't
I
care.
turned it up a little bit, Paul or Tom. So let me know if that is any better. I may have to go into Skype and tweak those settings. You may have to turn me down in Skype, Paul, for me to come up a little bit. I don't know if that's.
Well, I can turn myself down. I just bumped me down just a little bit more.
Let's see. I can also crank you down a little bit here too.
This is
the stream settings. Try talking now.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? What's going on out there in video land?
And then if I try and talk now, does it sound any better or is it worse? Skype auto compresses volume. Maybe that's the issue. That's possible.
Yeah, but we don't have it on auto, though.
No, we don't have it on auto. We have it so that we manually get to decide.
Okay, I bumped myself down a few more levels. Does that help any?
Oh, look, another advertisement.
It's funny. It hasn't shown me anything yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, I'm not seeing a thing.
Yeah,
So,
it has a little countdown that said the next advertisement's going to start in so many minutes.
Yeah.
Tom says, okay, that's pretty good.
Okay.
So,
Well, I'm glad that we're good enough to not totally suck. That's good.
yeah.
There goes my advertisement.
Whether it is buying or selling a home, there is no bigger decision than choosing the real estate agent who
That's
will
a
represent
problem.
you during the transaction. We are Remax Equity Group, and some of our great realtors like
Sounds
Karen
closer to
Shaw
the mic.
are here for you. Beyond being trustworthy and
Ha! There we go.
Did you find it?
Yes. Oh, sorry. It was in my settings. It didn't give me the option to mute it on the player itself.
No, it doesn't because they don't want you to mute the audio on the player.
Which is because everyone else always does.
Well, Ustream is different, so I don't know. All right, well, we should probably get started.
Yeah, we probably should. Especially.
Seeing as how it's like 15 minutes after.
Yeah.
So, all right. Bring up your DAW.
Oh, it's up, my man.
Okay, and let's hit record in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Rock in a Hard Place podcast. I am one of your hosts. My name happens to be Chris Cooner. Joining me, as always, with the cool shades on, his name is Paul Gibson.
What's cracking, my people? I'm Paul Gibson, and I, of course, host the Christian Rock 20 Radio Countdown, and super excited, as always, to be doing that. Co-host this show, and then up until at least recently, was hosting the Christian Music Archive radio show, which is coming to an end. But luckily, it wasn't my fault. So I didn't blow anything up. I didn't slip and say a wordy dirt in the middle of an episode and then push it out to a bunch of stations, nothing like that. So it's just its time has come to go bye-bye. And who knows, maybe it'll resurface one of these days. But at least for now, we're just going to wrap things on that and see how it goes.
Yeah, which is, it's kind of sad. I mean, it's become a part of us. A part of our show, and so I'm a little bit sorry to see it go, but I am happy that you have a little less work that you have to do now.
Right. It is nice that the timing coincided with me getting a part-time job and then getting one other thing off my plate. That I do like. So,
right.
It is what it is.
Exactly. Wow. Well, I never said my part. I am a DJ with Broken FM, so you can check us out online at broken.fm. I don't know. This morning's been kind of weird, just the way things have been going. It just seems strange, like we're we're out of sync or something like that. I don't know. It's gonna be crazy.
It could be. Maybe we're just dreading the impending doom of this topic.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a difficult topic to have to cover, and once again, we want to make sure that we handle these topics in an appropriate way for certain. But did we have any newsy stuff? I know last week I think we talked about children making their Kickstarter campaign. I had a chance on Monday to chat with Andrew from Project 86, and they were at like 35 or 36,000 of their $50,000 goal, and he seemed pretty confident that they were going to be able to pull it off. Now, I did kind of press Andrew a little bit and ask him, God forbid you don't make it, what happens? And he did not say anything like you did about not continuing on as Project 86.
Well, see, he was really blunt with me about that. He's like, I just want people to know we don't get the money. We're not going to make a half-baked album. We're not going to do one that's not, good the way we want to. We're just going to hang it up. So I don't know. I mean,
yeah, it was
maybe he likes me more. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I suppose that's a possibility.
Right.
But it was just it wasn't that he was cagey. He just said, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But he also was very, very confident that they were going to be able to make their goals. So
I don't think they have anything to worry about. They've still got like 30 days.
Yeah.
And very little in comparison to what they've already raised. So I mean, they're 3/4 of the way there already.
Yeah, I don't think that it's going to be an issue. I mean, Project 86 is one of those bands that they have a tremendous amount of fans that are very much die-hard fans of the music. So it's really not going to be that difficult, I think, for them to create this album and raise their funds. Andy Mineo is coming under fire a little bit for his song "Where the Wild Things Are."
Right. Yeah, or at least the music video apparently is getting a lot more.
Well, I've heard it's more than just the music video, because I haven't watched the video yet, but apparently the lyric where he talks about hanging out with porn stars and drug addicts and things like that is ruffling some feathers within the Christian community. And the only thing I can think to myself is, did you not read your Bible?
Right.
Because that's kind of who Christ hung out with in the New Testament.
Yeah. But you don't want that to sound like a good thing. I mean, Christ suffered while he was here on earth.
And he ate and drank a lot, too.
Right.
That's why they called him a glutton and a drunkard. I mean, come on. It's so funny how we want to be outraged, and I guess ultimately it's kind of the device that Satan uses to help keep us down, is because we're too busy picking at each other over some nonsensical things than we are in dealing with with what the actual issues are within some of that.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. We were doing some research for the episode that we're going to be talking about today, and I came across a couple of websites that are just sad websites in referring to Christian rock, and how basically these websites believe 100% that Christian rock is of the devil. And I'm not going to give the website
and most
names.
Of them.
Well, I'm
most
not going
of
to
them
give
were
the
just
website.
Christian music in general.
Well, yes, this is true. This is true. Let me see here. What do I want to say? We're not going to give the websites out because I don't want people to go to the websites and read the garbage that Paul and I had to wade through in coming up with all this stuff for this particular topic. But I mean, there's some things that have been said in some of these websites that just blows my mind. Let me see. There's one here. This of DC Talk. DC Talk's album Supernatural recently debuted at number 4 on Billboard between the satanic band Kiss and the Satan-worshipping soloist rocker Marilyn Manson. The kicker is what a member of DC Talk said when asked what he thought of the satanic Marilyn Manson. For those that don't know, Marilyn Manson blasphemes the name of Jesus Christ horribly. I'm talking Marilyn Manson, the freak weirdo, the sicko, the deceived one, who doesn't veil his contempt for Jesus Christ in any way. Consider what DC Talk's Kevin Max said when asked about Marilyn Manson. I'll let you read in this short, sad article for yourself. Notice how Time magazine can see the issue more clearly than Max, who's a so-called professional. And basically, Kevin Max goes on, let's see, asked his opinion of Manson, whose last album was titled Antichrist Superstar. DC Talk's Kevin Max said, I'd love to hang with him and discuss 80s music. Maybe they should talk literature. Manson's autobiography was titled Long Road Out of Hell. So DC Talk has been under fire for that comment, I guess, for a while now. And honestly, I don't think that these people understand the purpose of what this music is supposed to be. And I guess choir hymns are pretty much the only thing that, choir hymns and hymnals and stuff like that. It says it here in this thing. The sad truth is that most of today's contemporary Christian music is straight out of hell. In fact, there is nothing Christian about much of their music. It's the same as the good cop, bad cop theory. If the separated Christian singers hobnob with the unseparated worldly Christian singers, then it makes one question the legitimacy of the entire Christian music industry. I mean, that right there, to me, just screams Pharisee.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, it with as much work as had to go into this website, to me, it doesn't even sound like this dude gets out of his house.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he probably still lives in his basement with his mom. That's kind of that's kind of my thinking, And I know that sounds harsh, but honestly, I mean, there's so much going on here that just it doesn't make sense. I mean, he talks about the Oak Ridge Boys singing decent songs as time progressed. They started singing all kinds of worldly garbage. The bottom line is that anyone who wants to make it in the Christian music industry, they're going to have to work with the devil's crowd. I mean, it just, they harsh on POD for being on tour with a lot of secular bands. Even Carrie Underwood, they've got a thing on here. The image of Underwood in Self magazine speaks volume. Notice the words of the magazine she is promoting: sexier, rich, American Idol. One of the titles here says, Jesus, help me be a lady, which is a takeoff of her help Jesus take the wheel. I don't know. It's just, there's so much stuff out there bashing on what Paul and I and those listening consider a legitimate worshipful music style, that it really makes me sad to think that there are people out there that are that dogmatic and that
it's sad. But you know what is encouraging to me, though? To look at a website like the one that I know where these quotes came from, looking at a website like that compared to like a New Release Tuesday or even a Christian Music Archive, I love the fact
it looks like it's from the 80s.
Right. It helps me feel better knowing that this guy obviously made it himself and has probably low end on the education scale.
Right.
It makes me feel better that people who have a reason to know better, most of them do.
Yeah.
And even then, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just really oversimplifying it, but to me, whenever you can easily say something like, way to hate on somebody with the love of Jesus, I'm sorry. It's just, it's sad. I mean, whenever you're doing nothing but spewing very hateful comments especially towards fellow believers.
Yeah.
Where do you get off on thinking that is something that God wants you to do? And how is that something that's making the world a better place or making other people want to come be a part of it?
Right. Well, and there was another one here that talked about how the even the Bibles that these groups are using are current translations, and that makes them not worthy of what they have going on. I'm trying to find where it was that they were using what they call apostate translations and things along those
Which
lines.
I'm sure this guy has gone back to the original Greek.
Well, that's my question: is what is his translation? Does that mean, or I should say him or her? I'm assuming it's a him, because most women wouldn't waste their time writing all of this stuff like that. But it's like, let me see. Yeah, I don't see where that was, but but he calls them he calls the translations of Bibles that these guys are using apostate. And it's
Right.
like I don't understand how a copy of the Bible that says essentially the same thing as the King James version can be
Right.
apostate. But he's very harsh on a lot of things. I mean, he's very very. People thought I said some harsh things about Catholicism. This guy just ripped Catholicism a new one, and not in a kind way.
No.
I mean,
No.
he is very very just rude and evil in what he says about Catholicism and that kind of thing. It just
didn't he call it like the world's biggest demonic cult or
he
something
did,
like
yeah.
that?
Well, and I mean that may be a paraphrase, but I mean it's along those same lines. So it's very interesting. Just this guy, a couple of these guys have some very odd ideas and. Like I said, I would love to give the website out so that you guys could check it out, but I don't want to increase traffic to the website, so we're not going to do that. Take our word for it. There's a ton of trash out there. It's not really worth reading. Let Paul and I read the trash so that you don't have to. Is I guess what I'm saying ultimately.
Because it's going to bother me for days. Every time I think back to this guy, it's just going to make me mad.
Well, and I mean to put it in perspective for people, it annoyed us. These websites annoyed us as much as that panel of so-called pastors talking about Christian rap. I mean, that's how bad a couple of these websites are. It's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, because it really does feel like it boils down to, I don't like this. Let's figure out a reason why I can make not liking this agree with religion so I can make other people feel bad for liking this so I don't have to ever hear it again.
Right. That's
what
it
feels
exactly right.
like.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it feels that way because, I mean, it just comes down to these people are different than me. There has to be something religiously wrong with that. I'm going to find some way to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, do we have any other newsy things that we need to talk about?
The only thing I can think of is the band Ruth randomly dropped a new EP with like very little fanfare. I mean, it just kind of came out and it's on, I think, Spotify and iTunes now. But it's either called Viola or Voila. I can't exactly figure out which is horrible for me as a broadcaster. But it's Voila, but then the A has an accent, so I don't know if that's Viola or Voila.
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 That's
okay.
French, yeah. Voila.
Yeah. Oh, it made sense, but which kind of stinks because in this week's Christian Rock 20, I'm pretty sure I said viola. But anyway, whatever. Whatever. I'm hoping that most people are just as ignorant as I am and don't know the difference. But anyway, but it's got 6 tracks on it. It's kind of another step in their evolution of kind of folksy rock, pop kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Right. Exactly. Kirk says, I once attended one of, let's see. Where is it? Tom keeps typing and shifting it up. So he says, I once attended one of those rock music is evil meetings in high school, but it was odd. The guy didn't hate on Christian music, but he acted like it didn't exist. He said it was frustrating. Right. So I went to, there was a guy by the name, there was a couple of guys. There was a guy when I was in high school by the name of Lenny Seidel, and he would come and preach the horrors of rock music and how the 4/4 beat or 2/4 beat or whatever it was. I don't even remember. That's how long ago it was. That was of the devil. And if it's something you can tap your foot to, you shouldn't allow it because that music is taking over you and all of this kind of stuff. And then
it makes you want to have sex.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what everything leads to. Everything worldly leads to sex. And so then there was another thing that we took some junior high kids to, and his whole thing was talking about secular rock and a lot of the stuff that's in secular rock. And I mean, we've known that the attitudes in secular rock have been anti-God for a long time. That doesn't mean every song is, but at the same time, I mean, these guys are not Christ followers, so why would they sing positive things about God and Jesus? So, why are you shocked? I think is it Paul who says, "Don't be shocked at the sin of the sinful people." That's what they do. they don't know any other way.
Right. And it's also, it comes down to a whole lot of things that are like that. I mean, you should not expect people to hold the same values that you do if there is not a reason for them to do so.
Exactly. And that's where I've had to come to a lot of conclusions on my own with stuff. the whole idea of homosexuality, gay marriage, all of that kind of stuff. It's like, I don't agree with it. But at the same time, that's because I hold to a standard that is different from what the world holds to. So does that mean, I can't expect them to hold to that same standard when they obviously don't? Their belief in God is non-existent, or it's completely different than mine is. So I can't expect them to see the same things wrong as what I see are wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get your point of view on that for sure.
So it just, it becomes I don't know. Well, we'll get into some of that in the next segment. I don't want to go too far.
We're blurring on that already.
We are. We're blurring on that. Any other newsy stuff, Paul?
I don't think so. It's been kind of a slow week.
All right. Well, let's see what Tom has for us in his review this week.
Rock and a hard place.
New music.
Review.
My epic. Behold.
Your Way back on December 10th, 2013, perhaps shrouded in the mix of Christmas music, My Epic released their album Behold through Face Down Records. Now it should be said that My Epic isn't your typical sounding face down band, but yet this album makes me want to fall down on my face more than any other on the label. Behold is a concept album, a worship album, a rock opera that has been met with loads of critical acclaim. Lee Brown of Indie Vision Music was quoted, "Not only was I listening to music, but the veil between heaven and earth was smaller in that place than before I hit play." William James of Outburn said, "My Epic's lyrical output makes even the most confident writer jealous, and their music violently and gently plucks your heartstrings into oblivion." I couldn't agree with these guys anymore. I was given this album by a friend and told I must hear it, but only when I can really focus on it. I laid in bed at the end of a day, slapped on my Bose headphones, pushed play on my iPhone, and experienced a musical trance that I haven't felt in a long time. There are reasons we don't hear much of this album on the radio. The songs are too long, averaging 5 minutes, with the final song, Arrive, over 8 minutes, and radio is, a lot of the times, a background companion, but Behold needs your full attention. I could walk through each song with you and tell you all the dramatic moments that make this album what it is. Like how in Hail, when Aaron Stone, a unique and emotionally authentic vocalist, begins to sing the lyrics from the old church chorus, "Majesty, worship your majesty," you feel like you're in front of the great throne giving glory to the King of Kings. Or how in Confession, you sense the conviction in Stone's voice and the guitar groove pulls you in like a sweet fragrance. Or how in the track Zion, you could close your eyes and picture yourself in the new city paved in gold with no need for a sun because the radiance of your king is so bright you just bask and rest. I could go into each song, but we'd be here for days. I'll just end it this way. In my opinion, Behold is My Epic's magnum opus, and the best album of 2013. It contains the most eloquent worship songs that will never be sung in churches. These songs were crafted, not just written, molded into pieces of art that will stand for years to come. I give Behold 5 rocks out of 5. For the Rock in a Hard Place podcast, I'm Tom Labonte.
Now, if that had been reviewed by the guy whose websites we were talking about a few minutes ago, there's no way that he would have gotten those same messages out of those songs that Tom did, because according to him, it would be impossible to have you brought before the throne worshipfully based off of the music and all of that kind of stuff.
You'd be brought before the throne in chains because you're about to get sit down.
Yeah, exactly. So nice job there, Tom. Appreciate the review. And that was My Epic, just in case you didn't know. Tom is actually a radio DJ up in Canada, and Tom, you're going to have to put the link or the comment in the comment window here so that I can actually tell them where to be able to find you and check you out and stuff like that. So we'll get that to you in just a couple of minutes. But it's good stuff, and I've enjoyed his last few album reviews. So we're grateful for that addition to the Rockin' a Hard Place podcast. Let me see. In the words of Nick Cage, that's high praise for my epic. So, good deal. Well, today's topic is going to be a little bit of a heavy one. Some news came out just the other day that Tim Lambesis, the former lead singer of As I Lay Dying, had been arrested for murder for hire. He was trying to find an assassin to actually kill his wife. Was the way the story had said. He claimed innocence in a lot of his conversations, which I understand. That's what you would do, whether you're guilty or not. You're going to say you're not guilty. And so he, Josh Olson 33, I don't know. Behold is fantastic and well-deserving of all the praise. Well, there you go. Good deal. So I don't know who Josh is, but welcome, Josh. So with the whole Tim Lambesis deal, he actually has pled guilty, which means there won't be a trial. It now just moves straight into the sentencing phase. And I guess part of his guilty plea, they're saying that his sentence is going to be about 9 years behind bars, give or take. He may serve 3 or 4 and get the rest off on parole or good behavior or whatever the case may be. I don't know. But that kind of got Paul and I to thinking, there's a few sides to this, to any quote-unquote scandal story. And the main side is kind of how we as believers react to hearing the news of something like this. Now, you go through and you read some of the comments that are after some of these articles, and there's people that are basically just completely like spouting bile at him for what he did, and there's other people that are trying to say, that are trying to say we need to pray for him, we need to love on him, we need to be willing to forgive him, especially if he's repentant for what he's done. So, Paul and I kind of wanted to take this time to bring up some past scandals and talk about it and see, just kind of give some ideas on how maybe some of this stuff could have been better reacted to and how that may help us look at how to react to the whole Tim Lambesis deal. Does that sound about right, Paul?
Yeah, I think so, because it is funny because you do see those two very polar opposite opinions. But to me, I don't know. To me, it needs to be somewhere in the middle, which is funny because to me, I think Christianity, despite the fact that I think so many of us really want the simplicity of being zealots and being very, very gung-ho and like completely unforgiving on any front, because we know what's right and we know what's wrong and nothing else fits within that. I think a lot of times what Christianity needs to be is a little bit more in the middle of things as opposed to on the extreme ends. So I don't know, but yeah, we're going to talk about it and some other things that have happened within the past years of Christian music and other things that, just really had the same kind of effect in their time as this is now. And we're not trying to say that previous things are as bad necessarily,
right?
If we're thinking about it that way. But, we're not trying to say that, this person had an affair. That's just as bad as trying to kill your wife,
Right.
And at the same time, it doesn't matter. All sin is equal. I stole a piece of candy from a gas station when I was like 4. That's just as hellfire condemning without Christ as me, doing anything that anyone else has done in the world. I mean, in Christ's eyes, in that moment, I'm as bad as Hitler without him. You know, it's just that's how it is, which is horrid to think of, but that's really what it is. We all need the grace that God gives freely, but we have to accept it. So,
and I think that's the hard part for a lot of us to understand is that, my sin is just as great as what we would call their sin.
right.
There is no line in the sand that says, well, a lie is of different value sin-wise and worthy of greater punishment or lesser punishment sin-wise than murder for hire or doing drugs or, whatever the case may be, actually taking someone's life, whatever the case may be. God doesn't say that. He said sin is sin. There is nothing in the Bible that will tell you that there are different levels or variations of the degrees of sin. It's all covered under one word, and that word is sin.
Yeah.
So I don't, there's no reason for us to be more upset at someone who's convicted of child pornography than somebody who's convicted of selling drugs or, murder for hire, or someone who sat next to you at church and told you they were fine when they really weren't.
Right. Yeah.
It all boils down to being kind of the same thing. So Paul and I, part of what, led us to these other websites is Paul and I went through and did a little bit of research in trying to find some past scandals and, how people ended up reacting to them or are built into these stories some. So, we kind of wanted to chat about that a little bit. So, Paul, why don't you kind of start us down the road and we'll just see where all this goes.
Well, I know for a lot of you, and probably even for me as well, a lot of times we think about ideas of scandal in Christian music as being something that's somewhat recent. I think most of us, probably the earliest real scandal that we can think of in Christian music was Amy Grant having an affair. And we'll get to that. But really, as far as stuff hitting the Christian community wrong, it started as early as the 1960s. The lead singer of what was considered by most to be the first contemporary Christian music group, they were called Children of the Day. Her name was Marcia Stevens. After the group broke up, she started a solo career, and her and her husband, who I believe was in the group as well, their marriage broke up, and then through her publicity, she announced that she was gay. And the Encyclopedia of Contemporary Christian Music editor Mark Powell referred to the incident as a contemporary Christian music's first official scandal. Mm-hmm. So it became a huge, quote, conservative Christianity's worst nightmare, a Jesus-loving, Bible-believing, God-fearing lesbian Christian, because she never said, I'm a lesbian, I think Christ is a load of crap, and I really never believed this at all. No. What she did was she did get a divorce. She did come out as gay, but then she performed her own music ministry, a new thing that she started herself called Born Again Lesbian Music. And in the mid-'80s, it was the first time that her and her media group or whatever were ministering within the predominantly gay and lesbian Metropolitan Community Church, as well as other independent Christian gay congregations that were not affiliated with the same MCC, Metropolitan Community Church. Yeah. So it wasn't that she left the faith, but she said, this is a part of me. I don't feel like it's wrong, but I still believe in Christ. I still want to help people. I still want to be a ministry to people. And it's funny because there's two reactions that I think a lot of people probably had to that. Yeah. One, you can't have one and the other. I'm sure a lot of people felt like you can't have your cake and eat it too. And, I can understand that to a certain degree. But at the same time, I think some people, probably not as many people, were open to admit this, but you kind of have to respect her to a certain degree. It wasn't as if she said, I don't now, nor did I ever believe anything else, but this is my conviction and this is what I'm sticking with. And I'm sorry that this isn't how you feel about it. Of course, needless to say, the Christian community did not react in kind to this at all. Mm-hmm. A bunch of the songs that she had written were really big hits within the contemporary Christian community. A lot of them ended up in hymn books. And so she started getting mail from people who had ripped her songs out of hymn books and mailed them to her in a way of saying, we do not accept anything that you've ever done. It is tainted. You're gone. Bye-bye. Yeah. And that was it.
So
And
one of the songs that she wrote, there was a singer, I want to say his name was like Norman Nelson or something along those lines, and he sang one of her songs, and it was called "For Those Tears I Died." And I mean, the lyrics to that song are truly amazing, in my opinion. I mean, the chorus is, Jesus said, "Come to the water, stand by my side. I know you're thirsty, you won't be denied." I felt every teardrop when I'm trying to think, when in darkness or something like that you cried, and I strove to remind you, or basically I'm striving to remind you that it was for those tears that I died. I mean, powerful lyrics. I get goosebumps when I think about that particular song. So then does that mean that song no longer holds the value? And I think that's part of the negativity of the reaction is we place people in these positions in such high esteem that when they do something that's wrong, instead of understanding that they are human and that they that everybody makes mistakes, we then suddenly kick the pedestal out from under them and then bring down baseball bats and rocks and start banging them on the head. I think one of the best examples for us to look at is the woman who, when Jesus was preaching in the temple the one time, and they brought this woman and threw her down and said, she's an adulteress. Jesus didn't pick up a club or a rock and start beating on her.
Yeah.
He basically said, okay, fine, but if any of you have sinned or have not sinned, then feel free to grab the stone, the first one, and throw it at her.
Yeah.
And by the time everything was done, they'd all left, and it was just Christ and her, and he basically said, you're forgiven. Go and don't do it again.
Yeah.
We don't seem to have the ability to take on that attitude. And I'm not sure if it's just a misteaching. Like, are we being taught the wrong thing, or are we misunderstanding the way we're being taught? We're not supposed to be okay with sin, but we're supposed to love the sinner.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where we kind of look at is, where is there a line, and if so, where is it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is true. So, I mean, this is one of those things where, this is not the first, and I can guarantee it won't be the last time that a Christian singer who has a platform comes out and announces their sexuality. Others that have done that since then, of course, Jennifer Knapp is probably the biggest name that's been recent, although she wasn't really like a huge deal when she announced it. It wasn't in the peak of her career.
Right.
Ray Bolt, so of course most people who grew up listening to contemporary Christian music remember the song, Thank You for Giving to the Lord. Huge song from him. And he said in a statement when he came out, he was like, look, I knew this for a long time and I tried to hide it. I can't do it anymore. And he's also another one of those people who continues to be part of the Christian ministry, despite the fact that he's come out.
Right.
Tone, a lot of people think it's Tonics, but it's pronounced Tone. He's a Christian R&B artist, although he's been one of those people who has gotten just as much, I think, mainstream recognition as he has in the Christian world, and was never a really huge deal in the Christian music world, but evidently he came out a while back as well. And then Doug Pinnick of King's X also came out. And he's one of the few that, at least in that group of people who came out and said, not only am I a homosexual, but I really, really don't want anything to do with Christian music. This is just too much.
Yeah.
I don't like the judgment that is constantly going on. And I think he's actually considers himself to be an atheist now. And of course you can find tons of pictures of him now with a pentagram, belt buckle and all sorts of stuff. I mean, he kind of went the total opposite direction. And, I hate that. I really do,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know necessarily that I blame him to a certain degree, but it's hard.
It's funny. The line that keeps coming back to me is the line from the DC Talk song, What If I Stumble?
Right.
And it's at the very beginning, you hear a pastor come on and he says, the greatest single cause of atheism in this world today is Christians.
Yep.
People that acknowledge Jesus with their lips, then walk out the door and deny him by their lifestyle. And that is what an unbelieving world simply finds unbelievable. And that's
right.
those words, I think, ring so true. people look at Christians as supposedly people having their act together. And I
Yeah.
don't think anything could be further from the truth. And I think that's why Paul especially talks constantly about the grace that's involved in our salvation. It is a matter of grace. It is not a matter of we suddenly become perfect. You know,
Yeah.
The Bible is very clear when it says, if you want to follow me, deny yourself daily, take up your cross and follow me. It's not a matter of a one time I said this little thing when I was 5 years old and suddenly
Right.
my life became perfect after that. You
Yeah.
know, nothing could be further from the truth. And that's one of the things that drives me nuts about some Christian radios stations is that they seem to paint this beautiful picture of nothing but puppy dogs and rainbows, and everything is just happy, and you give your life to Christ and all of your problems are solved and all your money issues are taken care of, and all of that kind of stuff. And you know, I hate to burst people's bubbles, but especially new believers, dear Lord, there is nothing further from the truth about the Christian life.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's ridiculous that people try to propagate that, and they try to teach this health and wealth and prosperity just by giving your life to Christ, and it's just that's not the way that it works. It's a daily struggle. You have to choose daily whether or not you're going to do A, B, C, or D.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, usually the wrong choices tend to be the more appealing ones in the moment, which
Yeah.
makes it very difficult.
Yeah.
You know, of course, there are more than just, you know, people coming out as gay that obviously upset a lot of Christian, contemporary Christian music fans, but also, of course, you have, you know, affairs. Those happen are probably, I would say, the most often, which
Yeah.
stinks.
Yeah.
You hate it because it's one of those things that I think most of us can identify with, even if you're not married. If you've ever had a boyfriend or a girlfriend, either the idea of or knowing what it feels like to have someone cheat on you
Yeah.
is just horrid. And, you know, you think back, and we're not going to go through a bunch of the details on this because I don't think they're really worth it. But,
No, it's
you
not.
know, Michael English, I mean, you know, with him, it makes it even harder because he was married. The person who he was having the affair with were married. They were both in different Christian groups, and they were on tour together. And so, I mean, that blew apart, you know, multiple careers when that happened. Of course, probably the most well-known, Amy Grant, with Vince Gill.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, it also hurt, I'm sure, the career of Gary Chapman, her husband, who was also a contemporary Christian artist. So, I mean, you know, you've got all of these things, and it's heartbreaking. But I still think to this day, I would say, a good chunk of Christian music fans will never forgive any of the people who were part of this.
Right.
It's just it's a one-strike system. There is no grace within Christian music, which is unfortunate because to me, if there is a place where there should be, this should be it. I mean, and that doesn't mean that you're saying, way to go hit that some more. You know, I mean, we're not trying to say, you know, go out and get it while the getting's good. You're
Yeah.
famous. Who wouldn't? I mean, that's not what we're trying to say.
Totally.
There's a big difference, but you just have to be able to forgive, and you have to be able to let that go and say, look, I understand that you're human, things happen. And also, and I know we've covered this on the podcast before, but when you are in the position that these people are in, most of us will never have any clue what that is like.
Right.
You're isolated. You tend to be very lonely, despite the fact that you're surrounded by screaming fans most nights of the week. That's probably the most lonely you can get, because the only people that you see that you can have any sort of meaningful relationships with are the people who you're on tour with,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be an opening band or people in your band or your roadies or whatever. Those are really the only people you really get to interact with on a meaningful basis. So it shouldn't be a huge surprise when things like the Michael English First Call thing happened, because they were around each other for long periods of time and their families are back home.
Right. But see, there's a thing about this that I think a lot of people don't take into consideration when they go on these tours with these people. There's guards that you have to set. You know,
Yeah.
there's things that have to be put in place. This kind of stuff happens so often that everybody needs to be even more aware of it happening, and they need to set more guards. They need to have more accountability in order to keep it from happening. There should never be a time where Michael English was alone with her. in this situation. There should never have been that instance to have allowed to happen. Now, human nature is human nature, and I totally understand that. Going back to where you talked about the idea of forgiveness. Forgiveness is something that we should give regardless. However, it's easier for us to give forgiveness when we see there's repentance. And repentance is something that is an agreement that what was done was wrong. That's the beginning to repentance. So if you're not repentant, and when you have folks like Jennifer Knapp, like Ray Boltz, who continue to live a homosexual lifestyle, which the Bible is very clear that the homosexual lifestyle is not of God. And those are God's words, not mine. So don't sound like I'm harshing on homosexuality. I mean, God calls it a sin. He calls it an immoral thing. So as long as that's continued to be practiced, I don't understand how these folks can say that there is, that they can continue to minister in that regard. Does that make sense?
Oh, I totally get what you're saying there. Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think all of this is so hard to process, especially when you consider how much of a pedestal that we put them on.
Right.
And that's a problem in and of itself. It's a problem when we consider people to be, for whatever reason, better than us.
Right.
And it's not so much that it's not the idea of, oh, well, we have the same amount of talent that they do. No, probably not. But at the same time, they're using their gifts, whereas we may use our gifts maybe in a less glamorous way. But still, it's you're using what God gave you, and if you're using it for God, there should be no reason why you should be like that much. There's no reason to put people on that much of a pedestal. It's like, sure, they can sing well or they can play drums well. That's great.
Right.
But they may not be able to mop floors as well as you can. It may come down to that big of a difference. And that sounds lame, but when it all comes down to it, everything is necessary in this world for people to do as jobs. I mean, obviously, we're not counting stuff like prostitution or drug dealer or stuff like that. But, when it comes down to legitimate works that you can do that can be edifying to God, you shouldn't feel like that you're a lesser person or that they're a better person than you because of their job. Because after all, that is their job. I mean, there may be ministry as part of it, but there's no one that says what you do can't have ministry as part of that too. And I think that that's a really hard thing to do because you come out of the culture where, singers and musicians and actors or whatever are seen as being celebrities and better than everybody else. And it's hard to get away from that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. Chat room, let us know if you feel like we're missing the mark, if there's something that we're not saying that should be said, or if we're saying something that you don't agree with, you're welcome to chime in on this, and we're certainly happy to kind of read your comment and discuss whether we think you might be onto something or whether we think you might be off base. No harm in posting it. So make sure you get your comments out there. I know Tom basically said that he agreed that we're hitting it on the head when we talk about the sin being the disease. And so that's definitely something. Sin is a disease that brings everyone down to the same level. He says we all fall short, and it's so true. Falling short is missing the mark, is what it is. God sets the mark, and we try to hit that mark under our own power, and we have no way to be able to do it. It's only in God's power that we have the ability to hit the mark. And again, to me, that's where it goes back to this whole daily thing. You take up your cross daily and choose to follow Christ, and you choose to do whatever the right thing is at that time. Forgiveness is something that doesn't necessarily have to be asked for. It's something that we should be willing to offer freely, considering that the gift of forgiveness was offered to us before we ever asked for it when Christ opted to die on the cross.
Right.
He didn't ask us, or we didn't ask him to forgive us until long after it happens. So it's he took care of it before we ever had the opportunity to even commit the sin.
Yeah.
And it's taken care of. Wes Nelson says it's totally true. Did we hear Phil's comments from Duck Dynasty, and what did we think about them? Phil's comments, for me personally, from Duck Dynasty, I felt that he could have found nicer ways to say what he said without sounding so condemning. However, what he said was true, and he used scripture to back it up.
I'm going to remain silent on this issue.
Okay.
I'm going to withdraw my opinions from this because it is not going to go anywhere good. Oh man, but yeah, and I mean but on some level, Chris, I totally see what you're saying. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, state your opinion, that's great,
right?
But you shouldn't be shocked whenever you come out and you say things that are obviously bashing on other people,
right?
And then go, but I don't understand what the problem is. I was just saying what the Bible says. I said it in a mean way, but I was just saying what the Bible. No, I'm sorry, that's not a justification,
right?
Right. I mean, just like walking up to someone on the street and saying, "Do you know God?" No. Well, then you're going to hell.
Right.
That's not loving. That
Yeah.
doesn't make people want to be part of the Christian community. And I think that it's terrible. And yes, Tom, no tact at all. Yes,
Right.
very good.
Right.
And I appreciate that, Tom, in the chat room there. Yeah, it's there's no tact to that. So I mean, no one says that you should not state your opinion. But on the other hand, I will say one thing about the whole Duck Dynasty thing. No one was squashing his First Amendment rights. That is legally incorrect. I will state that. No one was quashing his First Amendment rights.
Okay.
He had the right to say it. He had the right to say it however he wanted to, but at the same time, the network has the right to not have him be part of their show if they want him to be, and they don't have to have a reason, regardless of what he said or didn't say. That's not quashing First Amendment rights because ultimately they have First Amendment rights too. So
Right.
you
So-
can't have one and not the other because that's just not the way it works.
Yeah, that was a big deal. Now, people wanting to boycott the show or boycott A&E or whatever because
Right.
he was taken off the show, that's also perfectly within their rights.
Oh yeah.
You
Oh
know,
yeah, absolutely.
it's up to them. Whether A&E chooses, or chose to bow to that pressure was also within A&E's rights.
Right.
So I mean, there's a lot here that I think we tend to be such reactionary people.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we react instead of proact, and I think we need to shift our thinking to being more proactive. And the way that we be more proactive is by loving those people or trying to love those people that are unlovable. And that is a dag-nab hard thing to do. I
Right.
have people that I don't love. I
Right.
can't stand them, to be perfectly honest. I don't want to have anything to do with them.
Right.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wrong. I
Right.
can't help it. It's one of the many things that I struggle with in my life is trying to love those people that are
At least to you,
seemingly,
unlovable.
to
Yeah.
me, unlovable. Exactly.
Right. No, I know exactly what you mean, and I will confess that I have a hard time loving people. I have a harder time loving people who are saying things that I disagree with and trying to put them underneath the Christian banner
Yeah.
than I do with people who, as we talked about earlier, don't necessarily have a reason to care or know better. It's not. I mean, I get that. It's like, okay, you don't know. That's fine. It's just like a kid. When a kid does something that they don't know is wrong,
Mhm.
you're like, okay, you're not going to get a spanking this time, or you're not going to get put in timeout this time, whatever the case may be. I mean, you're like, you have those moments.
Right.
My
wife and I call those training moments.
Exactly, training moments.
Is there rebellion in what they're doing, or are they doing it because they are a child who does not know?
Exactly. Thank you. I appreciate it. See, I don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews, so I get it.
Yeah.
Just probably not on the same level, but it comes down to that same idea. It's like I find it a whole lot more easy to be forgiving to people who don't have a reason to know better.
Right.
And maybe it's wrong, but I also have an easier time forgiving people who grew up in an environment where there's no way they would have any idea to know better. Like people who have been famous since they were 6 or
Right.
even 13 or
Right.
even 17. They never got a chance to grow up. It's kind of hard to be mad at somebody for doing something that if they were in a normal world, they would have found out a long time ago wasn't the best decision.
Mhm.
But when you're surrounded by people who are just going, yes, that's awesome, that's great, do it, what are you supposed to do? I mean, it's kind
Well-
of hard to have the same kind of conscience in that situation as it is whenever you have a loving parent over your shoulder going, that's probably not a good idea.
But there's also the idea that once you come to realize that this particular thing is not good,
Yeah.
to continue to put yourself in situations where you're going to be tempted and tested to do those things is also not good. You know, that an alcoholic doesn't go to a beer tasting if he wants to maintain.
Right.
You know, or I should say, a recovering alcoholic
Right.
does not go to a beer or wine tasting if he wants to maintain his sobriety.
Right.
It doesn't happen. A drug addict doesn't go hang out with his friends while they're doing drugs if he wants
expect to stay clean, yeah.
Right. If he wants to stay clean. You know, everybody is amazed and surprised at the death of Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Right.
You know, the guy had been a heroin addict for a long time, and it's incredibly sad that he ended up overdosing and taking his own life. In my opinion, he was a very talented actor.
Yeah.
But when you have those connections and you don't remove yourself from that temptation, it's going to come and bite you in the butt.
Yeah.
It is. So if you are tempted by other people, you know, in a sexual manner, then you need to remove yourself from around those other people, because all that it's going to do is bring the potential for a major fall. You know,
Right.
Wes says it's a tricky topic, and it is, and that's why we're trying very carefully to handle it in a way that is appropriate. He says, in high school, we just say we love all people and let the people dealing with sin work it out with God. And I think that's a great idea. But unfortunately, I don't think it's always possible for everybody, because we all have different levels of maturity in how we handle these kinds of things. You know, when the Jennifer Knapp scandal broke and she came out of the closet as being gay, the backlash that she received was tremendous. And I think that's part of why we wanted to talk about this is our responses need to be more loving towards those people in saying, hey, look, I don't agree with what you're doing, but you are still a child of God, and we still love you. The only way that you're going to have any hope of helping them through a difficult time is by loving on them. And if you can't love on them, then stay away from them. You don't need to say anything.
Right. Yeah. And also, I would suggest this to anyone listening as well. And this is one of those things that's really hard to do because it goes against culture in general right now. If you read something on the internet, I would say two things. Number one, double check it.
Right.
Because I know that everyone knows this intellectually, but anyone and any organization can say anything they want to at any time. It doesn't have to be true. And if you pick it up and run with it and it's not true, you're just as culpable as they are.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. So you need to at least double check it with more than one source. Look to see if the source has a reason to be saying that maybe is not fair. You know, double check those things. I mean, there are tons of examples that could be made, but I mean, you know, if a source is saying this and that you know falls directly in the crux of that source's reason for existing, you might want to double check as to why they're saying it or if it's true, because it would be convenient for it to be true for them because of who or whatever they do. That's number one. Number two, I would also say, if something really, really hacks you off on the internet, don't immediately go to Facebook, Twitter, or your favorite blog and post about it. Because more than likely, 24 hours later, you're going to look back at that and maybe wish you could take it back, and you can't.
Well,
and
and
despite
the odds
what
that
anyone
you have
thinks,
all of the
you can't-
details
Right.
are slim as well.
Oh yeah. You more than likely don't have all the details, even if the details you know are true.
Yeah.
Because there's always more details that you can know, and no one's saying that you have to hunt down the person responsible and interview them in depth yourself. We all know that that's not possible.
Yeah.
But at least in most cases. So I mean, no one's telling you that, but do some due diligence before you go on Facebook and start spouting off and reposting stuff that you may or may not know to be true.
Right.
Because it's sickening. I mean, even just something totally innocuous for the most part that happens. About every 3 months, some celebrity is dead. They're not dead. Somebody is doing an experiment to see how many people he can get to believe that, who am I thinking of? Like Adam Sandler. It happens at least once a year. He dies in a snowboarding accident. Adam Sandler's not dead.
Yeah.
Do some looking. And it's hard. I've gotten sucked into one or two things. I will totally admit it. But you got to be able to look at those things. Number one, try not to react when you're in extreme anger about something, even if you do disagree with it, and even if you think it's true. Because we live in a country right now that has gotten so divided on everything that it's just sad. It's like you don't even want to talk with half your friends about half the things that are meaningful to talk about because you're afraid they're going to kill you for it.
Yeah.
It's getting to where you can't have these kinds of discussions, which feels like that was not the case 15 years ago.
Right.
So, I mean,
Right.
I'll just throw that out there, and now I'm going to shut up about it. Okay.
Well, I think the internet has brought about, a lot of, the internet and news, I think news in general, like media news-wise, your local news or CNN or whatever the case may be. I think that because we have access to that information 24/7 and because it spreads so much faster, that I feel like there's a lot less fact-checking that goes on before a story is published. And so you've got somebody wants to have the scoop. So they take whatever the details are and they throw them out there. And then later on, they may go through and do an update or two or whatever. But the story that breaks initially is typically the one that everybody runs with.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of scary because, it wouldn't take much to cause mass panic nowadays. When you think about stuff back to like War of the Worlds when that happened. I mean, obviously it seems kind of cheesy now, but you think about somebody accidentally talks about, there's a nuclear weapon being fired from some, country that we're not exactly in good with at a certain coast, you could have riots on your hands. And I know that's an extreme situation, and I would think most news organizations would do more fact checking in a situation like that as opposed to whether or not Adam Sandler died. But yeah, so I hope so. Yeah. But it's just in these situations, just be very careful to get all the details and try to react in kind, because I think more often than not we very easily forget the idea of, okay, what if it was me on the other end of the stick on this? Right. What if I had just massively screwed up? Because in as much as Chris and I, neither one are rock stars, nor will we ever be rock stars, there would still be some waves if all of a sudden it came out that either he or I were cheating on our wives, or, we had a love child somewhere, or, even if we just had a drinking problem. Any of this stuff would cause a certain amount of waves in the circles that we travel in.
Right.
And it's very easy to be in a normal person's shoes situation where you're like, okay, well, I get to look up to everybody because I think that everyone is more, big name or has more publicity surrounding them or whatever than me. And it's easy to not think about, okay, if I got caught in something like this, how would I want to be treated?
Right.
And I can guarantee you that most of the people in Christian music, when something like this comes down, whether or not they openly admit it or they get caught, I bet they feel like crap about it. And they don't need thousands of people lining up to walk up, slap them in the face and go, that was horrible.
Yeah.
I think by the second person, they're going to hear everything that is going to be said to them one way or another. And they don't need that one more person piling onto that. It's just terrible.
Exactly. No, I mean you're absolutely right on that, and that's why I say it's just like the love aspect of things needs to be the thing that wins out. Let me see. Tom says, I remember when the Tim Lambesis thing broke, my manager told me about it and said that it'd be great to get on the air, but my gut reaction was, whoa, let's get some more details before we slander a dude.
Yeah.
So, it's very true. It's one of those it's one of those things that, I understand the idea in today's culture of getting the information out to the people as quick as possible, but that's not always the best solution. We don't always take a step back and realize, okay, by continuing to talk about this, who else's life are we damaging? Because it's not it wasn't just Tim's life that was upset by this. Okay, it was his wife, it was his kids, it was the rest of his band,
his record
label, and all of that stuff. Now, I heard that apparently there is still an Austrian Death Machine album that's going to be coming out in April. Somebody said April 1st, and I'm like, okay, that's the prime setup for an April Fool's joke.
Right. But I think it was mostly done before all of this started.
Right, honestly. Right. Now, but my question is, how is this album going to do?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. For one, I don't think most of the Austrian Death Machine fans are Christians.
Right.
On the other hand, if you go to any metal blog that's just a mainstream metal like website or blog or whatever, it's not like anybody was lining up to pat Tim Lambesis on the back for at the time allegedly trying to kill his wife. I don't think anyone thought that was a really great idea.
Right.
I think there were some people who implied that that their wife they were not very happy with at the moment. They could kind of understand, but other than that, no one was like, "All right, dude, kill your wife." Yeah. I mean, no one was doing that. But at the same time, I think that it'll be interesting, if nothing else, just to figure out how the mainstream community will react, because Austrian Death Machine has never been one of those things that, apart from maybe a site like Indievision, that most people would ever find out about Austrian Death Machine in a Christian context. I guess. So, wow, it's anyone's guess.
Well, tough topic today. You know, what have we learned? We've learned that we need to be more capable of love when we find out that others are having struggles, and not so condemning of them as people. You know, if you want to talk about disagreeing with their actions and the things that they've done, I think that's fine. But there's a way to do it in love. Am I perfect at that? Absolutely not. No stinking way am I even close. But I think it needs to be encouraged. You know, Tim Lambesis needs prayer. He needs to be prayed for. You know, he's come out recently. Well, not recently, but he came out a while ago and was kind of saying that he didn't really think that he believed in Christianity anymore. You know, so if he's calling himself an atheist now, something had to have happened at some point to cause him to lose his faith. You know, that's between him and God. That's not up to us. But that does not mean that you can't pray for him and, you know, pray for his soul. And that doesn't mean that he can't be reached out to try and talk to and you know, who knows, maybe won back to the faith. I don't know. It's so hard to say what was going on in his head, and we'll probably never know.
Yeah. Well, and also, you know, that goes back to the whole thing of not being able to truly appreciate the kind of position that they're in. I mean, you know, here you have a guy who, you know, is part of arguably the biggest Christian metal band that, at least as far as sales at the time, you know, huge national tours. They didn't have to play Christian festivals anymore. They did from time to time, but you know, that was not necessarily something they had to depend on anymore. They were on a mainstream label. They had been for most of their career. They were very big. You know, and also, not that I still don't think this was a logical defense, and I know they tried this early on. But you know, there is something to be said for the fact that he was on steroids. It's just like, you know, it's to some degree the same thing as giving people just a little bit of slack whenever they say something stupid when they're drunk. Right. You know, it's like you're not quite right in that moment, and I get that. It doesn't mean that that's not his fault, because, you know, no one forced him to take steroids, and obviously that was a bad decision to begin with.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I'm like, you know, it would be slightly different for me if he was, you know, sitting on the front row of church and, you know, stone sober all the time, and was trying to get his wife killed at the same time. To me, that feels a little bit worse. And once again, yeah, all sin is the same, and I get and appreciate that. And I'm not trying to equate it, but I'm just saying, try to appreciate the situation he's in. We probably will never know exactly what was going through his head, and that's okay. That is between him and God. That is one of those things where that is between him and God, and you know, whatever I think is irrelevant. And I hope that whatever comes out of this leads to him finding a better place to be. And you know, and I even hope for him to find a better place to be, even if it's not necessarily with God. I think that you know, I don't want him to not find God, but at the same time, I think that there's something also wrong if we're like, well, I hope he either rots in jail or finds Christ. You know, I hope life sucks for him if he doesn't find Jesus. You know, but I don't know. I mean, I hope the best for him. I don't necessarily wish him to get off scot-free. I mean, I think there would be something wrong if a judge was like, I know you're trying. You don't have to go to jail. No, I think he probably deserves it. And if nothing else, that may be a good lifetime out for him to be able to have some time away from all the fame, the glitz, the glamour, and even the media attention, because, you know, this will die down. It will be another thing that, you know, some other podcast or whatever the thing will be in 20 years will refer back to that hardly anyone remembers.
Right, exactly.
But for now, it's a big deal, and I hope that things, you know, work out for him and for his wife and kids. I mean, that stinks.
Yeah.
that really stinks for them. You know,
Yeah.
it's and it doesn't sound like things were great right beforehand either. But still, you know,
It would have created
hurts.
less waves had he just decided to divorce her
right.
than to have her killed. You know,
Yeah,
to
no
attempt
kidding.
to have her killed, I should say.
Yeah.
So you know, I don't know. To me, that obviously says that he wasn't in his right mind at the time
Yeah.
that he tried to do this. So you know, I'd like to see I'd like to give him personally a little bit of grace in that regard, that he was not thinking clearly at the time. But that still does not excuse the action of him actually
No.
going through with it.
No.
You
sure.
know, and I think that just that screams that there's a bigger underlying problem there that he needs to have dealt with, some mental issues and things. And of course, steroids can bring about some of that. So
Yeah.
you know, here's to hoping that he gets the help that he needs in order to try and get his life back together, whatever that ends up looking like in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right. Well, I think we've beat that horse as much as we can.
Right. Suffice it to say, we had a lot more that we could have talked about in previous Christian scandals, but they're not necessarily necessary.
Yeah.
But, you know, the fact remains, you know, try to understand people's situations, give them some slack, and think about it in the most simplest ways of what is a loving thing to do and what would I want if the shoe was on the other foot.
Agreed.
It makes a big
100%.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The Rock in a Hard Place podcast presents
The one and the only. All right, boys and girls, get ready for
The Stew.
All right, Paul, why don't you tell us, remind everybody, what is up with The Stew?
The Stew. Well, The Stew is a holdover from a previous radio show that I did. And basically what you're going to hear is you're going to hear two movie clips, but they're from the same movie. So Chris is going to try to figure out one movie title, and then there are three song clips that relate to three different songs. And he's going to try to figure out either the artist or the title. And if he can figure out both, then that's even better. And this week, at my wife's prompting, they are all kind of thematically connected.
Ooh.
So if you figure out like half of it, it will help you figure out the rest. So they're kind of all connected to each other in a weird sort of way, and it's not an extremely like obtuse thing to where it's like, oh well, they all had the same backup in studio guitarist on track 2. It's not anything that mean. And
Okay.
I tried to make the song clips a little bit longer, but I will forewarn you, one of them is a remix. So it's the curveball of the 4.
All right.
So
Okay, so 3 songs, a movie, and a common theme.
right. You don't necessarily if you figure out the answers, the common theme will beat you over the head. It's not like you have to figure that part out too bad.
Okay. All right. And chat room, you're welcome to guess after I have given up if I haven't gotten them. But please don't post anything ahead of time because I'm supposed to try and figure this out on my own. So just throwing that out there. Okay. So here we go. This is the Rock and a Hard Place podcast, The Stew, Part 2.
Portable television studio. No wonder your president has to be an actor. He's got to look good on television.
And the rain came down and it blew the four walls down.
It works! I finally invented something that works!
Working like a model, look at you now.
Well, any guesses?
I'm furiously writing down. Okay, so the first song was Ruth with Back to the 5.
Okay.
The second song was Two Sets of Joneses by Big Tent Revival.
Okay.
The third song was Wobble by Family Force 5.
Very good.
And the movie was Back to the Future.
Okay. Now, have you figured out the theme yet?
Let me see. Back to the 5, Two Sets of Joneses, Wobble.
Now, the third one kind of makes the theme a little bit harder to figure out if there was such a thing.
So let me see.
By the way, though, very good. I'm impressed. I didn't know if you'd be able to get all of them, but
Yeah.
I figured you had a good shot at each one, so I was hoping.
Well, two sets of. Oh. Kirk says, "Free bird." Okay, so the common theme. I must be dense because I'm not seeing. I mean, we've got Back to the 5, and then 2 sets of Joneses.
The last one's making it harder, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Family Force 5, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
No, you're thinking too hard about it. And honestly, because it's a remix, it makes it a little bit harder to see the whole theme thing.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want me to give it to you? Because
Sure, go right ahead.
I don't
Well,
think you're going to get it.
Does the chat room get the theme? We should ask that and see if anyone in the chat room happens to see what the theme is. And by the way, Tom, I get 2 sets of Joneses because it's one of my all-time favorite songs, especially by Big Tent Revival.
Well,
So-
see, and I knew that you knew it at least somewhat well because we had discussed it at one point.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I know that he has a good chance of getting this one. Because I'm
Yeah.
trying not to make it be songs that I don't think there's much of a shot that he's heard before. That's just mean.
So yeah, no, 2 Sets of Joneses is a great song. I love that song. I love the thematics of the song and everything like that. But I'm waiting on the chat room to see if anybody gets it. But because of the delay between us talking and what the chat room sees,
Who knows?
Exactly, we got to vamp a little bit here. So
Back to
yeah,
the
Kirk
wobble.
says back to the wobble. So, and then Back to the Future. So Back to the 5, 2 sets of Joneses, and Wobble. Movement, Wes says.
Oh, that's a pretty good guess. But it's not that kind of a theme.
Okay.
It's not time travel either, but very good, Kirk. And how appropriate that Captain Kirk would say time travel.
Of
It just seems
course.
like that works.
Yes, yes, that does seem...
Is it phasers?
That does seem appropriate. I
Okay,
don't know.
now... Well, here's the thing. I kind of cheated because really it would be so much more obvious if it weren't the remix because the title of the remix is what brings it all together.
Okay.
So you've got Back to the 5. You've got 2 sets of Joneses. Then you have Wobble, the Smile Future remix.
Oh, so it all has to do with the Back to the Future.
Yes.
Ah, okay. Okay.
So, like I said, I kind of cheated because I mean, if I tried to look for a song that had "future" in the title that I thought that there would be any chance that you would have heard and all this stuff. I'm like, that's a mainstream rap song. That's a mainstream rock song. That is a deep cut from something from the 80s. I don't think that there's much of a shot. So I went with this one and I was like, at least I think that he'll get the songs. But the theme may be a little bit harder. But dude, you got 4 for 4. That's pretty rad. I like that.
No, that was nice. That was very well done. Now, just so that the people listening know, Paul actually sent me longer versions of the song clips that I was to be able to use if I needed to. Like if I was struggling with something, I could just click. But just so you know, he didn't give me any hints. It just says song 1, song 2, and song 3. Oh, Kirk says Future of Forestry.
Well, yes, but what would have been the odds that you would have known a Future of Forestry song?
Yeah, I think there's one that we may play on Broken, but I don't know that I would have known it had that been included in the stew. So
Yes, and Kirk, I do have some Future of Forestry stuff in my list, so I did think about it, and I was like, that's kind of a narrow margin there, you know. I just don't see where that would have happened. Yeah.
Oh, man, that's awesome. Good deal. Good deal. Well, now, Paul alluded to this earlier today, and we have a little bit of sad news about a change coming to the Rock and a Hard Place podcast. The people who do the Christian Music Archive have decided to actually pull the plug on that project. So Paul is no longer going to be producing any of the Christian Music Archives. So this that we're going to air right now is actually going to be the last Christian Music Archive that we're going to be able to play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure we could dig around and find some that we haven't played, but it seemed like a good time to cut it off. And I think we played most of the ones that we would, that would be a really
fit
good
with
fit.
us anyhow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's that. And also it kind of helps that this is the actual last one that I produced. ever. So it has a nice sense of finality to it. And if you are interested and want to know, the ChristianMusicArchive.com is continuing as a website. That's not going away. But the radio piece of it, it wasn't working out in the way that we had hoped it would. A lot of outlets had said they were playing it, and unfortunately, because we have technology to be able to tell whether people were downloading it or not, it was obvious that some of them weren't.
Yeah.
And, hours of work go into this each week, and it got to where it didn't feel like the amount of effort that was put into it reflected the amount of results that it was achieving. And, he has a life too, so.
Yeah, you yourself, you were writing the scripts for a while, and you said it was around 30 minutes per, and that's just writing it out. That's not doing the research to get the details together to do it. So 30 minutes just to write it out, and then, of course, there's the audio production that's involved, all the editing and, the different song choices to be done and everything like that. I mean, it was a great feature, and we loved being able to play it here on the Rock and a Hard Place podcast. We were very grateful that Paul's friend was able to allow us to do that. And I've enjoyed the archives as well. But we just wanted to let everybody know that we are having to close the doors on it because they are closing the doors on that aspect of the website. And so we won't be able to play anymore after this. So, Paul, why don't you go ahead and play our farewell Christian Music Archive.
Here we go. We're opening the vaults of the Christian Music Archive. I'm Paul Gibson. Today we're rocking with Ian Eskelin.
No matter where I am, I'm on a mission. No matter who I am, I will stand firm.
Ian Eskelin is an in-demand record producer, songwriter, and solo artist, as well as founding member of the Grammy-nominated rock band All Star United. He won the Dove Award for Producer of the Year in 2008 and 2011. Ian has worked with Francesca Battistelli, Sidewalk Prophets, and Stellar Cart, just to name a few.
Another one to gamble on. Oh, something went wrong, 'cause we're not gone. Bets are all off. Let's restart the wait for a supersonic dream day.
As an artist and writer, Ian Eskelin has had more than 30 top 10 singles, and his songs have been used in TV and movie soundtracks. While attending Wheaton College, he released a rave album under the name Zero, then went on to release 3 solo projects, starting with Brand New Language in 1993. This is Ian Eskelin. To learn more about Ian Eskelin, visit our website, ChristianMusicArchive.com.
That's right. So be sure to check out ChristianMusicArchive.com. Support the website if you have the ability to, because it's a great resource that's out there. And so we don't want to see the website go away. But unfortunately, it is what it is.
Yeah. And also, for what it's worth, for those of you who are interested and maybe have a good bit of musical knowledge already, it is it is not just the person who runs the website who puts the information on there. It is a fan-driven website as well. So
it's like a wiki?
Yeah, it's more or less like a wiki. So, I mean, if you have information, like, say, your favorite band isn't on there, you have the ability to put up, like, their album list, their rosters and how they changed, a little bio, maybe if you know what they're doing now, like maybe they're in other bands or whatnot, you can input all that yourself. You sign up for a free account to be able to do that, and you can just plug away at it and help rep the bands that you know and love from years past, or even current bands, as much as you like. So it's very cool. Obviously, try to be factual about it, because it's good to have true stuff out there. But by all means, do that. And Dave, who runs the website, will thoroughly enjoy it, because he does a lot of that on his own, which he enjoys doing. But there's only so much that one person can do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's sad, but we're glad the website's still going to be around. And like I said before, we're happy that we have had the privilege of being able to play the archive up to this point on the show. So we are thrilled with that. Well, I think that's going to do it for us for this week. So we want to say thank you, chat room, especially for hanging out with us and diving into the conversation. We've definitely had a good time with that. If you want more information on Tom Labonte, he is the one who does our album reviews Let me see here. I was chatting, and all of a sudden the chat went away. You can check out Tom Labonte on the following. It says he hosts The Edge on UCB Canada, 3 hours every Sunday night. And
Saturday.
Saturday night? Okay, I
Yeah.
can't read.
Yeah, 3 hours every Saturday night.
Okay, people are chatting, and the chat keeps moving. Do me a favor, don't chat for a minute. 3 hours every Saturday night. You can check them out at ucbcanada.com or rockfortherock.net. All right.
Sweet deal.
Chatting is now done. Good deal. I have a few things to put up there. It's a bit clunky to do in bulk, though. It's still a cool resource. So that was Kirk referring to the website for the Christian Music Archive.
Cool.
So let's see. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything along those lines, let us know. You can email us at rockandahardplacepodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit us up on our website, rockandahardplacepodcast.com, Facebook, facebook.com/rockandahardplacepodcast, just as you see it there on your title, or if you're watching the video. That's also cool. We are very thrilled to be able to do this Ustream thing. It looks like it's going to work out pretty well. We've done 2 episodes so far, and I actually have the ability to record it locally, so we are able to post it up on YouTube. And so we'll make sure that we get links to the video if people want to sit and stare at Paul and I while we do this show. So we are thankful for everyone that tunes in, whether it be via the live stream or via downloading the regular podcast. Take a minute, if you have not done so yet, do me a favor. If you download the show on iTunes, or if you have an iTunes account, go into your iTunes account, find the podcast, and just give us a rating. You don't even have to leave a review. Just give us some stars. We've got we're at 13 ratings right now, and we've managed to maintain 5 stars. And we're so thankful that you guys think that highly of this show that we do. But I'd love to see.
I'm glad that you said that. I was just about to say I'm praying for their souls for lying so much, but it's kind of the same thing.
Man. Yeah, exactly. So take a minute, go through, and just give us a star rating. You don't even have to actually leave us a review, although that's always nice. We really appreciate it if you would do that. So just take a minute, go to iTunes, and leave us a rating or a review, or both if you feel so inclined. We'd appreciate it. So I think that's going to do it for us. Nothing left to say except I'm Chris Cooner.
And I am Paul Gibson.
And we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
All right, Paul, you can hit stop now.
All right, done.